The United States is fighting a war inside its own country with deaths greater than that of the Afghanistan and Iraq War. Let me cite some statistics according to the Brady campaign. In just 1 year, there were 11,583 casualties, 584 unintentional casualties, and 71,386 people injured. Compare these statistics to that of the War on Terror, 4,489 casualties and 32,031 wounded. What kind of war am I talking about? Gun violence. Guns in the United States kill more people in 1 year than a decade-long war. We cannot deny that gun violence has become a huge problem in the United States. In order to combat the epidemic of gun violence, the United States should establish policies that ban the use of assault weapons by ordinary citizens, place tougher restrictions on who is allowed to own a gun, and ensure that people with mental illnesses do not come close to owning a gun. This issue is close to me as I have thoroughly researched this topic and I have followed many tragic mass shootings. I have been a staunch advocate of stricter gun controls in my community since high school. I know most of you do not feel any urgency to act or think that this issue will never affect you. Unfortunately, gun violence may someday affect you, your friends, and your family. Why not avoid all these unfortunate events by acting now to demand policies to curb gun violence? Gun violence is one of the biggest problems in the United States that has been caused by negligent policies and political gridlock. There are a few simple solutions that I will propose that would drastically reduce gun violence. Gun violence is a major problem in the United States. First of all, let me remind you on the staggering statistics of gun violence. According to the Brady campaign, a total of 31,537 people died from gun violence and 71,386 are injured each year. But looking into the statistics more carefully shows that gun violence is deeply affecting the most important age group of all, our youth. American Progress found that 17,000 people under the age of 30 are murdered each year. This is not normal. The same report found that teenagers in the United States are 65 times more likely to be killed with a gun. Since money is of great concern in this country, let's talk about the economics of gun violence. The Children's Safety Network estimated that gun violence in 2010 cost us a total of $174 billion. Courtesy of Forbes, this comes out to about $564 per taxpayer. Whether you like it or not, your pocketbook is being affected by gun violence. Finally, gun violence is simply destructive. Imagine your friends or family being murdered in a preventable tragedy. Richard Martinez was visibly shaken and emotional after his son was killed in the Santa Barbara tragedy. Nobody ever wants to see someone like this. Gun violence is mainly caused by lax gun policies, insufficient programs, and political inefficiencies. It is simply astonishing that you do not need an ID to buy an assault weapon, but you need an ID to vote. Here's a visual by Think Progress that shows states where you can buy an assault weapon with no proof of ID. And there are obviously no states that you can vote without a proof of ID. The access to high-capacity magazines is also a cause of gun violence. High-capacity magazines allow perpetrators to shoot many rounds within seconds of each other. According to a Huffington Post article, the shooter in the Tucson tragedy shot 31 bullets in a span of just 15 seconds. deaths could have been prevented if he did not have a high-capacity magazine. High-capacity magazines only belong in the battlefield and not in the hands of ordinary citizens. Another big problem is that mental health patients are also not being properly attended to. Sometimes people with mental health issues go off because they do not have proper access to a psychiatrist or doctor. Astoundingly, there has not been enough research on the topic of gun violence, and there are not enough organizations dedicated to preventing gun violence. We have no government-funded organizations actively dedicated to helping reduce gun violence. In fact, the CDC is actually banned from researching and recommending policies about gun violence. Finally, our politicians can be blamed for their inability to act and agree on policies even after a rash of mass shootings. After every mass shooting, politicians promise change. They simply talk the talk but never walk the walk. The time has come to implement some much-needed gun policies and establish national organizations dedicated to stopping this epidemic. First of all, we must make sure that we increase funding for people with mental disabilities, making sure each has proper treatment and access to a doctor. There must also be a national do not sell registry to make sure guns never fall into the hands of people with mental disabilities. Second of all, we must support more research about gun violence and establish national organizations to help in this fight. The CDC must immediately be able to research gun violence and issue recommendations while we build a bigger organization tasked with finding a solution and being active in the communities to discourage gun violence. Third of all, the sale of deadly assault weapons and high-capacity magazines should be banned. There is no need to have a military-grade weapon in your home. These weapons only belong in the battlefield. Finally, and most importantly, our political leaders must implement these policies and be willing to tackle this problem hands-on. The time has come for them to act now. In short, gun violence is a huge problem in the United States that has received little attention. We must reduce gun violence by implementing the solutions I described. Gun violence affects our whole society, and it is time that we take a stand. Let us make sure no more innocent victims' lives are taken by gun violence. No more excuses and no more inaction. It is time that we demand a solution to this epidemic. Thank you.